Well, hello, y'all in internet land. I am Dickie. This is Donnie. We are the Dickie and Donny Show presented by Business on Purpose. And we are here to liberate you from chaos of the fires that are burning in your business and get you to a point where you have a business that you own, not a business that owns you. And so today we have David Privitera here with us, who has 3 decades of experience
Ooh,
in commercial contracting and just being an absolute boss. So, David, great to have you here today in
yes,
Charlotte.
welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Great to be here. So I'm on the show because my name starts with a D, and that goes well with
That's right.
Dickie and
That's right.
Donnie. So
Dickie, Donnie, and
only
David.
guys with D's, or ladies with D's too, for that matter. All right, love it.
It's
I'm
true.
in. I'm in.
I love it. Well, David, one of the way we start off, we do this with every guest we've ever had. We do three really quick questions. The first answer that pops into your head, you got to answer. So, Dickie will
Okay.
will start us off.
All right.
Yeah, burritos or tacos, David?
Burritos.
Burritos.
Yeah.
Long walks on the beach or short walks on the beach?
Long walks.
Okay.
Man, I know
That's
we're
it.
doing this every
I'm
time.
eat,
And
I'm
every
eating
time I'm
I'm
like
eating a burrito on a long walk.
burrito, long walk.
Do you put both socks on before you start shoes, or do you go sock shoe?
No, I'm a sock shoe guy.
Okay, yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's
Because I mean,
the
you'll be
important
hopping.
stuff.
You'll be hopping if you only have one on, and it's just
That's
it's
right.
weird.
Okay, I
But
love it.
if I'm walking on the beach, with a burrito, I might go for a taco or ask you, could I dump it into a bowl and just make it easy?
Taco bowl. I like it.
Taco
It's
burrito bowl,
good.
maybe.
Burrito bowls
All
are
right.
good. I had one this
But
weekend on a road
yeah,
trip, which is
nice.
a little iffy, but we went for it. So, David, thank you for joining on. David, could you give our listeners just a quick 2 minute? I know Shawn said you kind of had 3 decades under your belt.
Sure.
Walk us through your story as a business owner, specifically in the construction world, real quick.
Sure. 34 years in the commercial construction industry. The last 20 were growing and running a small business. Started that chapter in 2005 and actually stepped away from that after 34 years in the industry last year, before I started doing this current chapter, which is working with some smaller business here locally in Charlotte. Yeah, I started off as a great project manager and did that for several years and had an opportunity to take over a small existing company actually. So I didn't start it from scratch, but it was very young, you know, one and a half clients, $5 million a year in revenue. And then, 19 and a half years later, it was 40 people and $125 million in revenue. And wasn't a straight line. That was through a great recession. That was through a pandemic. So lots of EKG moments. But I truly stepped into it, not really with the entrepreneurial spirit quite yet. The business acumen and the opportunity that was in front of me came later. At first, it was an opportunity to have flexibility in my life, and didn't go into it thinking about wealth, but went into it thinking about maybe I could do something a little bit different than what I've experienced in my career thus far.
Hmm.
What did you've been through COVID, you've been through ups and downs. I think on kind of an earlier conversation, you've talked about getting perspective in those difficult times. I mean, what does that look like to maintain some sort of level balance or just, going through weird issues with supply chains or tariffs or all these kind of crazy things people are throwing around right now? How do you manage to stay afloat in all that?
Great question. My favorite word is equanimity, and I didn't come up with that. I found that but it's about balance. Equanimity. It's a great word. And if you look at the definition, it really kind of hits home. For me, it's, again, the way I always framed it with my team in my last chapter was more, listen, every contractor is facing the same thing. It's the same supply chain, the same weather, same subcontractor base,
Mhm.
same
Hmm.
inspectors, you name it. The only thing we can do differently is how we treat each other inside these four walls, and these four walls being the company, and how we behave and support each other, maybe in a little bit different way than what we've seen in the past. And so that kind of it was more of a cultural approach, I think. Didn't really call it that when I was saying it, but it was more about, listen, we could support each other in a different way and try to make and know that when all those outside forces are coming at you, you've got a team that's behind you. It's kind of a servant leadership mindset I've always had since I started, leading teams. But yeah, it was just about just how do we deal with the same things in a different way and support
Hmm.
people in the process.
So the team, having the right team makes a difference for weathering challenges. Is that what I'm hearing you
Without
say?
Without question. Yeah, it's an old cliche. I think it was good to great, having the right people on the bus and in the right seats on the bus. But yeah, it's about surrounding yourself with the best people that you can. Because again, life's too short. And again, that's one thing people want to separate business and personal. But if you're in a small business, it's intertwined. and you're going to spend a lot of time with those people. And in theory, your parents taught you that, and you teach your children that. And I try to teach them the business as well, too. Who you surround yourself with is one of the most important choices you could ever make,
Mm,
especially in business, because those people are going to be the ones. And truthfully, one thing I've learned firsthand is that how people behave when things are difficult is exactly who they are.
mm,
So if you just keep that lens, and keep that perspective, and know that how you behave personally during a difficult time, that's who you are. That's how people will always remember you. So I always
mm.
took that to heart
Yeah.
as I was going through difficult times.
Man, that you hit on a couple things, and one of them was actually the last episode of this we recorded. Life and business necessarily intersect. If, like you're saying, the work-life balance is almost impossible to find. That's why nobody's ever found it.
Oh,
Is they necessarily intersect. So you hit on that, and then we talk about it all the time. People don't buy your product; they buy your process, and you bought into that. Where, I mean, we're getting our set. We're using the same vendors. We're using the, you name it.
yeah,
We're using it. The same thing our
yeah.
biggest competitor is, but our process, the way we treat people, man, that's cool to hear, David. It doesn't shock me that you were able to grow it with that approach. So good work. That's great.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear contractors bitching at me all the time. Oh, sales and marketing, I can't get the right leads. And I don't know, David, I hope you've seen this movie. Glenn Ross. You've seen that?
Always be closing.
Yeah, yeah.
Always be
So
closing.
I always, every time I hear the word leads in a coach's meeting or whatever with one of our guys, all I hear is this, I want to get the good leads, but they've got
Yeah.
marketing groups and marketing people and social. They're like, how do I get these people, these leads in? And I love that you said we're all looking for the right connection. So we have an ideal
Oh,
client list and we're looking for the right people. We all have the same challenges, but everyone thinks they're special. Like, oh, it's so hard for me to do it, but there's 100 contractors that are doing the same thing.
yeah. There's a couple different easy approaches. You could be the low cost producer and be a commodity if you want to be. Bless your
Mm,
heart if that's what you want to do. Um, on the flip side, you want to be a high service provider and hope you get paid, maybe a higher fees as a result of that. But it's a balance. You have to strike a balance between not being a commodity, but also having flexibility to deal with the situation. From a sales perspective, it was never go in the room, showy, salesy. That never was my style. It was more about building trust first. Help, a
Mm,
client comes to you and they have a problem. That problem could be, again, a project, a budget, site logistics, you name it. And your job is to help them kind of navigate that problem, solve that problem. And when you do that in a way where it's not just a pure sales technique, that's how you build trust. And again, and once you do that a few times, and again, it's not a meteoric rise. That 19 years of
mm.
growth was not a straight line. It was the EKG of life. And you learn mistakes along the way, and you hope that you practice problem avoidance more than problem solving. And if you fall into a hole, climb back out, remember how that felt, and don't do it again. But I think
Man.
it's, yeah, the key to really building lasting relationships, short of just being a public bid contractor where if you're the low bid, you got it, and then you wonder what you forgot in the process. If you want to have private negotiated work, it's about building trust. And people
mm,
have to know that when things are difficult, how are you going to behave? Going back to my previous comment. But then also too, just create an experience for people where maybe have some fun along the way too. And if you have those same great people around you during this, it tends to make it a much better experience when all those outside things are coming at you.
You've got a real people focused, empathy focused perspective. And so I know
Mm,
you mentioned servant leadership in business. To me, most people think about business as the bottom line, bottom dollar, net profit. The most critical things are, we don't run a nonprofit, we run a business, but you've got a real people perspective. Talk to me a little bit about how is the people and the product work together. So you talk about how
Sure.
product changing, but how have you focused on both those at the same time?
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, we don't have most general contractors, if that's the role, and that was my role. We're not, it's controlling the chaos. We subcontract out the lion's share of
Mhm.
most happening. So it's about being more of a police officer than a fireman, hopefully, and it's just controlling the chaos. And when we talk about people, you mentioned the bottom. That's the kind of way I led. Was I always talked about it from a bottom up perspective. We actually flipped our org chart where I was at the bottom and we went up and out from there. Because I mean, it's cliche, but in theory, I'm the foundation of it. And the people, that larger group of people, your project managers, your superintendents, that's the group that's touching the public, that's touching the client, that's touching,
Mm-hmm.
the vendors more than I ever could. So my responsibility is to kind of push you up and out and support you versus being above you,
Hmm.
tugging you up like the traditional org chart might show. So that was a literal graphic way to show it, but that was the approach. Again, we're service providers. We don't have a patent process. It wasn't like we were making some widgets in a warehouse and delivering them to your project.
Mm-hmm.
We were putting things together. And again, it goes back to finding the right people and having the right support. One of the things that I never had coming up, which kind of was some of the inspiration for this chapter of my life, I never had a mentor. I had bosses, and I had partners, if you want to call them that, but I just had people that if I had a question I can answer to. But at the end of the day, I was figuring stuff out. That hole I mentioned before, I fell in it. I walked into the wall. I wasn't always this
Been in the
beautiful.
hole.
Been in the hole, been in the ditch. Yeah, yeah. These dents in my head. If you're seeing me on video,
You're on the
came.
YouTube channel.
I'm
Yeah.
on the YouTube, so you could see all the damage from the years. But seriously, so one of the things that I first focused on the last few years in my business, and now I spend my time doing a fair amount of my time doing now, is really kind of being there's that generation coming up that talk about succession planning, but that next generation, being that sounding board, being that mentor, helping them navigate problem avoidance, steer around the hole, and versus how do you back out of the hole. And so that's something that I started doing within my own organization, which I wasn't finding anywhere. And now as I talk to other small business owners across all industries, yeah, they're busy in it, can't work on it.
Yep.
Therefore, they have to get some help really helping guide, grow that business acumen before they actually need it. I learned it as I
Hmm.
went, making the mistakes. So there's so many opportunities, and small businesses are just, again, that's my heart. That's my whole career. And again, I've learned it doesn't matter what your end product or service is. We all have the same challenges, no matter what business you're in, especially if you're a small business. We all have, if you have people working for you, you have challenges and also opportunities that go along with those. Did I answer your
Man,
question
David,
there?
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
yeah, I know you said you weren't like into, you weren't that like flashy sales guy, but I'll tell you what, you're doing a heck of a job selling what we do
I
right now,
appreciate
talking about working in and working on your business. This is a great opportunity. If you haven't visited businessonpurpose.com, go ahead and visit, or businessonpurpose.com/healthy to see how healthy your business is. Let's see if you're at David level right now. But David, you've had an amazing trajectory of business. And here's a question I think for just me as a guy growing in business myself and for our viewers. When you got into business or business ownership, you said you bought a business that was pre-existing, albeit
Mhm.
relatively small. What was your biggest misconception of being a business owner? And if it's the same or different, what was kind of your biggest lesson that you've learned that if you could go back, you're like, man, if I had learned this quicker, things would have been
Yeah.
a lot easier. So biggest misconception and kind of the thing you'd tell yourself.
Yeah, again, I learned what dry income and retained earnings meant. Didn't necessarily understand what that meant. Again, as a general contract, having a clean balance sheet is
Hmm.
something that I think is again, unless you have as a general contractor, unless again, if you don't own a bunch of equipment, don't have a patented process, inventory, whatever, you basically have your people, your reputation, and your cash. And having a clean balance sheet as a small business is really, really important. I think a lot of people sometimes when if they're just making money, don't pay attention, and the balance sheet gets a little wonky.
Hmm.
And that's fine if you're making money, but as soon as you need to maybe grow a line of credit or being underwritten for a large project, a new surety perhaps, having a clean balance sheet is really, really important. And that takes time. It takes time you can make some good decisions by not buying houses and buying cars and buying planes and stuff like that, but also just retaining earnings and really being disciplined enough to keep the
Hmm.
cash in the company because that's what you really need to grow the
Mhm.
company. So really it's, and then again, it's I think so. Yeah, that was the biggest lesson I learned was the importance of that business acumen of understanding
Keep your
what
cash.
what the balance sheet says and what that really means and how it's interpreted
Hmm.
by underwriters all over the place. So I wish I knew that then. Misconception, again, it's there's. I mean, I'm not a glamorous guy, but there's very little glamour in a small business. It takes a while. You have, you know,
Hmm.
our industry is a bunch of it has a very fast grapevine. Good news travels and bad news travels like wildfire. So it doesn't take much for, if somebody's having a difficult time, difficult moment, the industry knows about it. So treating people the right way, doing the right thing, being consistent with your behavior, as I said before, all those things play into building your reputation. And people want to work for people that have good reputations, that pay their bills. I mean, it's not rocket science what we do. It really
Mhm.
isn't.
So keep your cash. It's not glamorous. You're really
Mm,
just selling like a steady,
That's
consistent. Um,
that's it. That's
how
it.
tell me how how did your product change or how did you scale? Like I'm thinking about, I don't know if commercials like this, your receivables take, th 2, 3, 4 months to get paid out, but how did you grow your balance and how did you change your product over the years or did you change what you were offering? And then did that
Hmm.
affect your cash flow?
Good question. Yeah. I always say contractors are really bad banks. If you think about it, in the private sector, if you use an AIA type contracts, again, we work for a month, we send you a bill, you pay me a month later. Then when you do pay me, you pay me 90 cents on the dollar because of retainage. Horrible, horrible business model, but that's how we manage. I think so again, managing cash again was just being strategic. As we were a smaller company, don't go out and get a fleet of trucks. Be strategic on how you compensate your people. Watch your bonus structures. Again, always be aware. Again, there's that while you're having retainage held as a contractor, if you're buying through purchase orders materials directly, that's more cash flow. So being strategic with a line of credit, I think is important to keep that cash. As far as the kind of like the business lines, again, there's an old cliche. Wayne Gretzky, hockey player, used to say,
Hmm.
he was successful because he used to skate where the puck's going to be because everybody's
Mm,
fighting where the puck is right now. So I never played hockey, but it's a great analogy to use. Again, everybody's kind of fighting with where business is right now. It's
mm,
been multifamily for the longest time and it was
yeah.
industrial. Now things are a little bit different. So what's next? Office is still a little wonky, retail maybe. So it's really kind of just, studying the tea leaves and trying to understand and ask questions and talk to as many people as you can to see where things are going and try to start skating that way before the rest of humanity. Because I trust me, once it starts, everybody's going to be there. And in the start, as a small business, we tried to penetrate where it made sense, like whether it's the size of the customer or the size of the project. Here in Charlotte, big banks, right? Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you got Duke Energy, you got big hospital systems. But as a small contractor, to try to penetrate and compete with all the big boys, it wasn't going to happen. And you can go in there and you can be one of 25 guys to paint that wall, or you can look for and size yourself with the smaller banks, the regional banks, look for if it was healthcare, look for the support medical office buildings, the secondary and tertiary ologies type of thing versus going after the big hospital systems and penetrate in multifamily. We didn't go after the 300 unit project. We started with the 30 unit project and did that well. And then kind of go from there. So don't be
Mm.
afraid. Keep your ego in check and penetrate where it makes sense for who you are. Geographics,
Man.
another one. Yeah, you got to be careful where you go because again, is your system are your superintendents, are they home every night or are they road warriors? If they're not road warriors, be careful traveling. And vice versa. If they're road warriors, don't try to place them in one spot for too long or you're going to lose them. So just know, what your strategy is and adjust to the tools that you have in your toolbox.
I love
And
that, man. I think people just bite off more than they can chew when they start a business. They're like, I'm
oh,
going after we
yeah,
do a
it's
lot of
ego,
residential
man.
contracting. It's like
Yeah,
$10 million house or whatever, $5 million contract. And then
yeah,
realizing that, it's just the capacity, you need the people, you need the processes, you need the cash to run
no
that.
question. No
And
question.
I love
And,
that.
and the ego's a real thing. I mean, I think
Sure.
to own a business in any sense, I have an ego. But to find a balance, what's realistic? And again, as I said, there's the grapevine is
But
unforgivable.
especially in
Um,
Charlotte, the
oh
development
yeah,
community in Charlotte is like, it's like a soap
everybody
opera.
knows everybody else's dirty laundry. No
Oh yeah.
question. No
Well,
question.
David, you mentioned your ego and like that is real. How would you balance the two of your ego versus also like knowing what you're worth and knowing what you're worth? I'll share a quick story. I
Mm,
was working with a design firm and they were getting into a new space. So they bid it the same way they bid all their jobs. It's a new realm for them. And that, for instance, I think they came in at like 3.5 million on this job. That was their bid and they didn't get it. It was an immediate no. And whoever was running the job said, "Hey, I'm going to send you our bid list so you can see what you were up against." And I think there were 14 bids. The median bid was at 17 million. The highest bid was at 23. The second lowest was at 12, and they were at 3.5.
oh
So
my.
that balance, and what they were offering in their bid was actually more than most of the others, but it made it look like they were like they didn't know what they were doing because they only bid 3.5. And had they had the same exact bid and just thrown 15 million on, they would have had it, right? So this balance of ego, but also knowing what you're worth. How did you balance that as you went from a 5 million to 125 million? Did you have to change like, no, Yes, the product is the same as everybody else, but our process and our relationships are genuinely worth double what they used to be. Like, how did you
Mhm.
balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the commercial side, again, there's a lot of competition. I mean, I've been in Charlotte not my whole life, but going on 26 years, and every year I've been here, there's been two or three new contractors come to town. They're successful somewhere else, and they come to town and plant their flag, or there's a spin-off. So the competition is fierce. So knowing your competition is important. Again, we would always didn't do any public work. Did plenty of public work in my earlier chapters of, but in this last chapter, it was all private work. So we could ask, how big is the bid list? If it got more than 4 or 5, it wasn't, the view wasn't worth the climb. So we would probably back away. That's
Mm,
one way to know your worth. Again, don't, and know, I mean, the fee range is because again, in the private sector, if it's negotiated, a lot of times it was cost plus with a guaranteed maximum price. So the fee was part of and a lot of owners got in the habit of asking for a fee and general conditions proposal up front, try to lock your stuff in, and then everything else was kind of transparent, open book. That was one way to sell it too. If there were some GCs that were unwilling to go at those kind of contracts, I'm fine with those, or I was fine with those, where it would be, I think the more transparency you have, the more trust you build in the process. That way they know here are the 3 electrical bids. I'm not bamboozling you with that. So at the end of the day, it's your general conditions, which are typically tied to staffing and time is something you really got to watch. Because that's another way two people would win deals. They'd say, okay, their price is a little bit more, but they're going to do it 2 months quicker. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to do it 2 months quicker. And they would finish
yeah.
3 months later. So
Nice.
it's really knowing, what the market will bear. If we could push up, rates, we would. Typically, though, it's being strategic. It's not just on your fee. Look at your hourly rates you charge for your people. Look at other reimbursables if you have Procore or general liability insurance and other things you can charge for. You can be strategic with those too. Don't just get caught up in just saying, well, my
Yeah,
fee
that's
is what it
good.
is. Yeah.
Here's my cost. That's great.
Yeah.
David, tell me about a time where you really hit a wall in like a challenge, either in the field, in the company, and you felt like, man, we really did really well working through it. I just love to hear a story of how, like,
Yeah.
Well,
not, I don't want you to be the hero, but I want to hear how,
no,
like,
no,
hey,
trust me, I'm
tell
not.
me a struggle and that you nailed it and you like your team crushed it.
Yeah. Well, I think going through, I'm going to go way back when you
Okay.
guys were all super young, the Great Recession, right? It hit set in, what was it, late '08 for most, for the banks and all
I
that.
was
But really,
I was a home builder then. I was a GC then, so I'm not too old, Dave. I'm not too young, David. I mean, I
well, you,
look young, but you know.
I was not a home builder at that time, I will say it.
so truth be told, it was a situation where again, I think none of us knew, how deep it was going to go. And because of backlog, I don't think the industry really felt it. At least the commercial side didn't really feel it till maybe late 9, early 10. Because everybody, even if the banks, uh, dumped in late 8, there was still, 10, 12 months of solid backlog and opportunities in the pipeline. So it was really 2010 when I called 10 and 11 the barnacle scraping years. It was a situation because again, I had people around me who had been around longer than I've been around and had been through other recessions. So like, well, this shouldn't last more than, 2, 3 months. And then it was 6 months, and it was 9 months, and then it was a year. So I think during that time, making good decisions about what we did and didn't do. I think there were a lot of companies that, out of desperation, would took on opportunities during that period that they never would have considered during other
Yeah.
times. Whether it was
Mm.
the scope of work or maybe sometimes the client you were working for, who you work for is that same conversation of who you surround yourself with, having the right clients across the table, really, really important. So we didn't take on any legacy deals that would have caused damage to the balance sheet. If we took any hits during that period, it's because we kept people on staff. We figured, okay, how much longer could it possibly go? And let's keep these people
Mm,
busy in some fashion, even if we're paying them to stay at the house because they're great people. And if we lay them off and save a buck or two now, when the pendulum does swing back the other way, we're not going to be able to find those great people, or if we do, it's going to be starting from scratch. So that was a good decision, I think, to not take on any what I'll call bad legacy projects. I
mm.
didn't have any projects where I had to file liens, got paid for everything, just didn't do as much work as we wanted to, and paid a few good people to stay at the house for a little period of time. But when the pendulum swung back, call it 12, and from 12 to 23 was nonstop, and then the pandemic played its game a little bit. Again, that was in the pandemic. It was about spending 6 months fighting over what force majeure meant. It was ridiculous, but I think we learned some lessons there now, and hopefully people are taking those lessons today with this unknown uncertainty of the tariff situation and getting good with their language now before they really set in to
Mm.
protect them. That's the key, is like learn that lesson. It's different this time because the stuff before we couldn't get it because it was stuck out at sea. This time, who knows what it's going to cost. So how do you build some protections and take some of those lessons learned and just build that language now before you're fighting over a contract?
You're almost, did you get a law degree? I mean, in contract, it feels like, I mean,
Well,
commercial spaces, I know is just a little more
yeah.
challenging and complex in contracts. Is that right?
Without question. It's funny. I think it's funny. My wife would say, and my kids would say too, just the way I debate things. Dad, you should have been an attorney. I might have been a lousy attorney because I don't enjoy it. It's funny. I don't enjoy but it's again, if you're going to run a business, especially that's one thing about construction. I think people can commercial contracting. It's very competitive. Again, it's just putting up buildings, right? It's just putting sticks and bricks together.
It's
But
easy.
at the end of the day, it's got some complexities. You're dealing with very sophisticated owners, sometimes maybe large private equity funds. You're dealing with architects from other places. You're dealing with different government agencies. You got subcontractors from all over the place. It's management of a million details, and as a result of that, you have to just again, I would be a great part-time underpaid attorney, but that's about as far as I go with it. But having a good working knowledge, again, I'm not a financier, but talk about balance sheet. I'm not a therapist, but talk about HR and people
Mm,
issues. You have to have a sense of all those different things and know what you don't know. Know what you don't. That's a really important lesson to learn. And then when you
Mm.
don't know, seek the appropriate counsel.
man, that's so, I mean, it's all of our business owners are chief everything officer.
Well,
You got
without
to be
question.
part-time sweeper, part-time
Yeah,
attorney,
yeah.
part-time, all these things. I think it's
I,
so true.
I make great coffee because I made it for so many years in the office. I mean,
Yeah, right.
You wear
You
all the
don't make
different
Keurig
hats.
coffee, do you? You make
what's
real
that?
coffee. You don't make Keurig coffee, do you?
Well, we got into the Keurig world because it was funny. I think there's been a whole, and that's a whole other topic. We can go another hour on that.
Cancel the
The coffee.
podcast. He drinks
Yeah.
Keurig. It's over.
No, 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 no. Listen, no. My wife bought me a Nespresso maker, which is
Oh, that's
That's
different.
different.
their pot.
That's
Okay,
different.
Different.
so yeah, but I like me. I have a friend. I got a French press. I got a drip
Yeah.
pot. I mean, come on. But I do have a Keurig, so don't judge. But if you just want a quick 8 ounces and you're in a hurry,
What do you call it when it's not judgment? It's just like factual. Like I'm not judging you. It's just factual that you're lesser than if you're a
No.
Keurig drinker. I'm just joking.
wow,
Uh,
wow,
I'm just
it's a
joking.
tough crowd. Of all the
Uh,
things
We-
you're gonna pick on my coffee choice.
well, we
well, you do
can't pick
everything
on
else
anything
well.
else.
Yeah, you
All
do
right,
everything else
all
so well.
right,
We're just
Uh,
sitting here like, man, this is incredible. Like
all
this
right.
wisdom of
yeah,
like,
David, this has been awesome. So, okay, David, this is how we'll end.
Okay.
And again, thank you from Dickie and Donnie from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you to our D brother David for coming on to us today. We have business owners in every span of business ownership. We have the guys that are startups that want to do it right from the beginning. We have people that are 5 years in and woke up and regret their decision. We have people that are 20 years in, don't regret anything, but now want to give it to a kid or sell it. They're spanning all. What is the final piece of wisdom just from and you're not done learning yet. I know you alluded to the fact that you'll never be done. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. But leave us with something. Leave our listeners and I almost said Shawn and I. We don't exist with Dickie and Donnie.
Yeah.
Something from your experience to chew on, knowing that our audience spans a lot of different areas.
Well, I think I would say, the only two true commodities we have in life are time and our money, right? And we don't have enough of either one of them. Well, you can in theory create more money, but you can't create more time. So be really strategic with it and how you spend it. And then the second part of that would be who you spend it with. Start with
Mm,
who. There's a lot of books but I'm saying there's a fact to that. Start with the who. Surround yourself every day of your life and every aspect of your life with the best people that you can, people that make you thrive and don't make you wither. And if you do those things and you treat your time appropriately, and the last thing I'll say is self-care is real. If we've learned anything over the last few years of the
cool.
pandemic, self-care is a real thing. So take the time to decompress, detox, whatever that might mean for you. And I think you will last longer, become more resilient as a result.
mm, that was good. I tell my kids that, David. I tell them who you spend time with, who you're engaged with, and we've tried to help them start to navigate. If you see someone that just doesn't reflect who you want to be and like treats people the way you want them to treat people, it's okay to kind of separate from that relationship. But I don't think they
Mm,
understand that, or they're middle school, high school, starting to. But I wouldn't have
Yeah.
believed that when I was their age. Like, what does it
yeah.
matter who I
Yeah.
spend time with? I'm my own person. But
Oh,
man,
it,
gosh, I can't.
it
I love that.
it's so tough right now too for young people too. With the aspect of social media, it's just there's so many different pressures that we didn't have coming up.
Yeah.
I don't envy that position for sure.
Yeah, totally. Well, David, I owe you lunch and I would love to treat you anytime you want to go to lunch. I'm going to take you out, you're in Charlotte with me. So if people want to connect with you, David,
I
what's
thought we were
the
getting like
best?
the jet. And we're gonna fly somewhere for lunch.
Oh yeah, yeah. Scott, the Beebs, our owner's got the jet today. He's up with the
All
Yeah.
Benhams
right,
and I think
all right.
we got to find the jet.
We'll just pick a brewery in Charlotte then. How's
That
that?
sounds great. David,
All
if
right, I
people
might
want to
drive up
connect
for
with
it.
you, and I'm sure if I listen to this and I didn't know you, I would want to connect with you and learn more about
Focus Forward
Focus
Advisory.
Forward Advisory. Tell us how we
Yes.
can connect, they can connect with you.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media guy myself, but I am on LinkedIn, pretty active there. You can find me there. And then my website is focusforwardadvisory.com. Again, I'm a solopreneur, according to QuickBooks anyways. It's just me, but I'm enjoying my time, spending time with small business owners, helping them work on it. And then really I've got this niche working with those number 2 emerging leaders, trying to be that guiding light for them to get them ready for that next chapter. So
And you do
those are the
some nonprofit work as well, right?
I'm heavy in nonprofit. Yeah, I'm the vice chair of a nonprofit here in Charlotte called Families Forward Charlotte. It's about breaking the cycle of generational poverty. It's my 3rd year involved with them, 2nd year on the board. And again, as I mentioned, vice chair, and just incredible work. And that
Mm,
really was, if you want to recenter your life and realize how first world your problems probably are, go spend some time in the nonprofit world,
mm.
and
Man,
that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean,
it's awesome.
David, I can't thank you enough. I
My
wrote so
pleasure.
many notes, and
Yes, so did I.
just when you meet someone who has such experience and such knowledge and wisdom that you're like, it bleeds out. You can't, it just
Oh,
comes
and
out.
guys
It's
are
like a
too. I'm gonna
fruit.
start blushing. Can you see my tans coming in now? I'm
Yeah.
blushing. You
I
guys
mean,
are
I'm
awesome.
serious. It's just
I appreciate you.
we love
Yeah, that's
coaching
good
people
stuff,
and
David.
helping people. So thanks for taking time to advance people in the next generation. We'll sign off here, Donnie. If you have questions about coaching or want to connect with us, we'd be happy to connect with you at businessonpurpose.com. You can click our connect form or find us on LinkedIn, or you can send us a carrier pigeon and we'll probably we'll email you back. So y'all have a great
That's right.
day and we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.